Hello. Today I'm going to talk about Kantian ethics and the categorical imperative. Um, so, first of all, there are many moral theories that have been suggested over the years, many of them deeply rooted in philosophical schools of thought, such as adopting a hedonistic lifestyle or only living to please oneself. But Immanuel Kant, a heavily influential 18th century German philosopher, based his ethical ideas roughly on the essence captured by the Golden Rule, which is the idea that one should treat some others the way they want to be treated. To elaborate, his moral theory relies on both parties in a moral interaction to reach a common ground or an equilibrium, much like the Golden Rule. You would treat others the way you would want to be treated. You meet at the middle. The issue with the Golden Rule, though, is that it relies entirely on the wants and desires of either party. And Kant does away with this with his fundamental idea of the categorical imperative. So let's break it down. The categorical imperative is Kant's groundwork for his moral theory and is essentially described as both parties being obligated or commanded to act in a certain way, regardless of their wants or desires. This certain way to act is defined by the universal morals that must be followed in a way that is unambiguously explicit and direct, hence the categorical imperative. Kant elaborated his idea into several formulations, two of which are the most famous, the formulation of the humanistic approach, the humanistic formation, and the universal law approach. So first, I'll talk about the humanity formulation, which states that for both parties to be morally right, they must treat one another and themselves as ends instead of means. And I feel like the dichotomy of ends and means is analogous to the dichotomy of humans and machines. You would want to treat someone as an end, which would involve taking into the account that they are a human being, that they're a person with wishes, desires, and dreams, and not treating them as a tool to be manipulated for one's benefit as a machine. Another formulation of his categorical imperative, and perhaps the most pertinent formulation for a society as a whole, instead of just two individuals interacting, is the idea of universal law. The universal law is defined as the idea that an action is right if and only if and because everyone can adopt and act on the maxim, and if the maxim itself wills everyone to do so. And so this is again a sort of a mutual ground that Kant's established here. And in this case, you can almost think of it as like a universal circle of morals that cannot be broken. For example, although it may seem that the universal law doesn't inherently apply any moralistic values to an action, as all you'd have to do is conceive that people would be able to follow this maxim and that the maxim would will itself onto it. There is no inherent moralistic approach. The idea is that if you fail to consistently conceive that your action could be followed by all parties and that the action wills the parties to follow it, you're essentially creating an exception for yourself. And so you break that circle of universality, and thus the basis of the universal law itself. And so the universal law differs from the Golden Rule in that it's not based on the desires and wants of people to act in a certain way, but rather that all people would conceivably act a certain way. They could all conceivably be expected to act this way regardless of whether they want to or not, which is just the case in modern society even. Perhaps someone with both homicidal and suicidal tendencies would love to go on a killing spree and end it with a suicide, which would be just, according to the Golden Rule. Treat others the way you'd want to be treated. You want to kill other people and you want to be killed. However, with the universal law would not permit it, as that would be an exception to the rule that you would expect everyone, or rather the majority, to follow this maxim. Not everyone wants to do that. In fact, the majority of people don't want to massacre innocents or take their own life. So in conclusion, Kantian ethics is based on the fundamental principle of people being guided by a set of rules, despite their own volition, what he called his categorical imperative. These rules must be followed strictly and unambiguously, and we are guided by these principles that cannot be broken. If we are to craft an exception of the rules for ourselves, we have violated the universal law, and our actions are unjust. So that's basically it.